Okay, so Bill Cable.
Well, thank you all for coming. It's a very good night to have this because it's going to be below zero tomorrow.
You're going to have to speak up because there's people in the back.
Yeah.
And you just speak up if he isn't speaking up. Okay, there is noise.
We're all concerned about heat this time of year. The Cornish Energy Committee's had a number of educational series about various things related to energy and conservation of energy and carbon and stuff. And so this fits in with that. The format of this will be, we have at least 4 people, and there may be other, who are all the people here that have heat pumps at the present time? So, yeah, and they're the speakers. So I was hoping maybe we would bring in a couple other extra people to talk. But those of us that have heat pumps at the present time and have used them for at least this winter and maybe a couple winters, we were going to give our experiences about heat pumps so you could kind of get an idea what it's like to be a user of a heat pump. And then our expert person, installer, Nathan Moore, is going to be here. He'll be arriving soon, and he'll be able to answer technical questions and a lot of detailed things that you might have. And so I wanted to briefly describe what a heat pump is. I don't know if you noticed that machine over there. That's not the type of heat pump we're really talking about, but that is a heat pump that can be inside a room and the 2 tubes go out the window and it'll bring outside air in, whether it's hot or cold, and then you can either have it take heat out of the air or take heat out of the room and blow the opposite out the window. So a heat pump is a device that transfers heat. And the reason that I'm particularly interested in it is most of us heat by some form of combustion, whether we burn wood or oil or propane or pellets. And that, of course, creates CO2. And like many people, I'm very concerned about climate change and how can we live in our climate without continually emitting CO2. And since a heat pump can heat us by extracting outside air, the heat out of outside air, and putting the extracted heat inside our house without any combustion, there is a possibility that that will be a very important form of heat in the future. Of course, where the electricity comes from is important. If the electricity comes from renewable energy that doesn't make carbon, put carbon in the atmosphere, then the heat will be totally carbon-free, and in the future we're going to need that. The main type of heat pump we're talking about today is called a mini-split, which has 2 parts. You've probably seen them, they're often on the wall. There's an inside unit, and then outside there's the main part of the machinery, a big fan and the compressor and everything. And so they call it a mini-split because it's they're usually smaller than a major air conditioner that heats the whole house. And there's 2 parts, so they call them mini-split. They also call them ductless heat pumps because they're inside on the wall and there's no ductwork going through your house. And that's the main type that I have experience with, and the people that we'll be talking to have experience with. But air conditioners and heat pumps, whole house heat pumps that use ductwork and stuff, they work by a similar principle. Mini splits are, they're small, they're pretty easy to install, They're not that expensive. They cost, you know, 1 ton, which is 12,000 BTU, costs around $2,000, but you can spend that much on a pellet stove or a wood stove, so they're reasonably priced. The outside unit is connected to the inside unit by 2 refrigerant pipes, and then most of them run on 220 volts, and that's hooked to the outside unit. There's a little cord that runs from the outside unit to the inside unit that gives it the power it needs. And you only need to put a 3-inch hole in a wall or however you're going to run the tubing into the inside unit. So it's a pretty easy installation. I have 2 heat pumps and I installed them both myself. And this person that's coming, Nathan Moore, he works with do-it-yourselfers, and he came. The critical part really is connecting the outside unit to the inside unit, evacuating that pipe properly. If all that is done right, then the unit should last many, many years. And so I don't try to do that part myself. I pay somebody to do it. And but otherwise, the rest of it is pretty easy for a do-it-yourself person if you are so inclined. Both our towns have, you know, passed resolutions to reduce our carbon and try to meet certain, by 2030, have all their electricity from renewable sources, and by 2050, everything, transportation and everything from renewable sources. So heat pump fit in well with our goals. A lot of people have trouble trying to understand how you could get heat out of the air when the temperature is 0 outside, but if you remember, absolute 0 is minus 259 degrees Fahrenheit, so there's a lot of room between 0 and minus 459, and so there's a lot of heat in 0 degree air, even though you don't believe it. The field is changing a lot, and there's a lot of interest in it. So myself, I decided to get 2 small units and not invest in any kind of big system or anything, because I think the technology will improve a lot over time. So I figure I have 2 small units. If one of them breaks or something, and then I have to install a new one, I'll just go with the new technology. As you see, the efficiency is improving every year between the different makes and models and stuff. When you are looking at what you might want to buy, you probably will look at the Energy Star ratings of them. And yeah, just see, I have.
Sorry.
When you get a unit, it'll have one of these Energy Star ratings, and they use 2 different ratings. There's a cooling rating called a SEER for seasonal energy efficiency ratio, and this is for my Fujitsu one, 12,000 BTU that I put in.
Can you turn it this way so I can show them? Okay, thank you.
The highest at the time this was done was 30.5, and mine was rated at 29.3. The higher the better. And so as a cooling unit, it's very good. And as a the heating rating is called HSPF, for heating seasonal performance factor. And they go, at the time this was done, it only went up to 13.5, but mine was rated at 13.8, so it was even better than what they had on at the time that the thing was rated. But those are the things that you would be interested in. For our climate, they're special. They make them special to work in cold climates. So you know, if you were in Georgia or Florida or something, you would be looking at a totally different kind of machine, and you would need to do your research. The outside and inside units, they can match them differently, so you know, you could get one outside unit and a different inside unit, and they would have different ratings and stuff. So you have to, they're matched up, you know, when you buy. And if you have somebody install it, of course, they would take care of all that. But if you were doing it yourself, you would want to do a lot of research to try to get as good as you can. The more efficient it is, of course, the less it'll cost to run. From my research, the two best units were a Fujitsu 1-ton unit, 12,000 BTU, and a Mitsubishi. And so the first unit I put in was a Fujitsu. I put that in 2017 in the fall. And my house is owner built. I built it, and it's round and it's stone with concrete behind it, and then that's insulated. So it has a lot of internal mass. And there's no basement, it's partly underground. And my house is really never hot because it's, you know, right on the ground. What I found putting in this one, it's really hard to say what you should, you know, how you should size it to your house and stuff. It really depends on how well insulated and tight your house is, and there's a lot of factors to consider. Our house there's openings and stuff that are not as good as I would like, and also the second story, we just depend on the heat from the bottom to go up. And in my situation, I found that in this 700 square feet, with the one 12,000 BTU unit, it worked really good down to about 30 degrees, if the outside temperature was down about 30 degrees. And then I would probably want to run my wood stove or my pellet stove a little bit. And so this year, in the spring, I put in the Mitsubishi one, which is the other very well respected cold weather heat pump. And pretty much works on any temperature so far that I've encountered. I do make a wood fire, a small hot wood fire in the morning when I get up. And we like to keep our temperature about 70, so on the one side of the room where the heat pumps are, it's probably about 74, and on the opposite wall, it's probably about 68 when I get up in the morning. And I make a little hot wood fire. It brings temperature up to about 75, and then all day long it drops a little bit. You know, this winter it's worked very well. I can't. I have solar panels and I have a lot of electricity stored in the grid, so I don't really pay for my electricity yet. I pay $12 a month to be connected to the grid, and I you know, have a record of what I put into the grid and what I've taken out of the grid. But it's hard for me to coordinate it with the heat pump. But I think I tried to calculate, like in November, which is a fairly cold month this year. I think I used about 500 kilowatt hours on my heat pumps, which would be, I don't know, $75 to $90 or something like that in electricity. When I was using a pellet stove, I would have used about 20 bags of pellets over about the same period of time, so that would have cost the same or a little more. So I don't think it really costs any more than a pellet stove would have cost to operate. In my house, I would say, you know, it's not a well-insulated house compared to some of the houses today. The cost of a pellet stove, of a heat pump, this two I put in both cost about $2,000, and it costs maybe $500 for the miscellaneous stuff you need to get, and then to have the lines evacuated and everything. It comes out to about $2,500 for each one of them. So, they're not that expensive to put in. And we were actually gone for 3 weeks in January, and we just sent our heat pumps to be 60 degrees, and it just stayed 60 degrees in our house the whole time. Didn't have to worry about it. It was nice. Let's see. One reason I like to have two is I have kind of redundancy. If one of them were to fail, if you have just one, and it failed, you would. And most of the year, like, I don't really need two until late November and through maybe March or something. The rest of the year, I would just run one anyway. And I just wanted to give the kind of pros and cons of what I see about them. They're very quiet, kind of clean heat, not like a wood stove where you get some smoke, or you have a pellet stove and you have to clean ash and get ash around. They're not very costly to run, at least in our situation. I find it's just as cheap as when I was using a pellet stove. Relatively cheap to buy and to install. There's really no fire danger with them as far as I can tell. There's that's one thing that we have to worry about. We always see in the newspaper about a place burning down from a wood stove. Or I like the fact that I don't really have to worry about it when they're running. There's no labor really involved in running them. There's an air filter on the unit that's on the wall, and you have to clean that from time to time. And then the outside unit, you need to keep leaves and stuff clean. You might want to wash it off once in the summer. And then, of course, they can be your air conditioner in the summertime. In our particular situation, our house is never hot because it's partly underground. And I found that it really did not work very well. Besides being cooling, they can also dehumidify. And either cooling or dehumidifying doesn't work very well in an underground house. Because our house never wants to be, it would be like 60 or 65 in the summer. And if you try to dehumidify it, it would take it right down to like 50 degrees. So it doesn't really work as a dehumidifier in my situation, but in any normal house, it would be fine. And in my last install, there's a New Hampshire Saves rebate of $400 per ton per 12,000 BTU. So if you put in a 24,000 BTU unit, you could get $800 back from your electric company. The funds for that can run out, so it's good to do it in the spring or early summer so that you can get that fund. But I did get it this time, which is nice. As far as the problems that you might have with them, heat pump is a low intensity heat. It's not like a wood stove or an oil furnace or something that really can really blow hot air, or you can stand next to a hot wood stove. It's not real hot air that comes out of a heat pump. So, I'm used to like to stand next to the wood stove sometimes when I come in and I'm really cold. Well, you kind of lose that.
Yeah.
And
You have to go like this.
Yeah, you can stand up to it like that. And so it'd be slow to heat up a big place. It's not, but it will work. they come with hand controllers that have so many options that, you know, I just don't get it why they do all that stuff, that, you know, timers and this and that, and I just think we just use it one setting and leave it alone. The outside air, the outside unit, when the temperature's 40 or below or so, it often gets moisture on it, the condenser, and it has to defrost itself, so it'll shut off for like 5 minutes while it goes through a cycle where it'll melt the water that's on the coils and stuff. So, you know, you might be sitting there and enjoying the kind of warm air, and all of a sudden it'll just shut off for 5 minutes, and you know, that's a little annoying. It's not a big deal, but
Can I just say something? You know, when you had that on, that is really loud. That is not the way the mini split sounds. It's very quiet.
yeah.
That's what impressed me, was it was very quiet.
As the temperature gets, you know, real cold, well below zero, they become less efficient and actually may reach a point like 20 below where they may not work very well at all. So you need a backup form of heat, which, because they use electricity, most of us would want to have a backup form of heat, because if we lose power, we're used to, you know, backup form of heat. But anyway, you might need it. It's, in most cases, you would not want it to be your only form of heat. In our house, it tends to be warmer in the area where the heat pumps are, and in the far side of the room it's a little cooler. So it's not like central heat or anything, but we have our couch and everything, watch TV or whatever over near where they are. It's very nice. I think that's about it, and we're going to have a long period for questions at the end, so maybe we'll just go into have Jim and Jody Schubert. They installed one this fall, and they'll give some of their experiences, and then we have two other, Billy Scharf and Will Brown. So why don't Jim and Jody?
Well, hello. Should I go up front?
Well, that'd be easier. Yeah, okay. Jim Schubert from Cornish, New Hampshire.
So it's a great opportunity to kind of just tell you how much we love our new heat pump, which Nathan installed for us. And you know, Bill and Mary have been using one for a while, and you know, they were talking about it, and it seemed like it would be a good fit for our situation. And it's an owner-built home, kind of a unique space. We have one, I believe it's an 18,000 BTU unit, and really it was pretty simple, leaving it to the experts to do it. I'm not a tech kind of guy. I can split wood and feed the wood stove. I've been doing that for 45 years. I love having a wood stove, and we still use it just for the very nature of just kind of like to set your coffee cup down on there, or you know, if you really want to feel some serious heat immediately, you know, you can do that. So we have ours set at 70 degrees, and most of the time, when we're heading out the door, that is one of the most beautiful aspects. Instead of like, okay, let's see, do I need to really pack the stove up and check it and make sure it's you know, going to last for the duration that we're out? We can just walk out the door, and there'll be coals in there, you know, which is fine. It's a good stove. But we come back, and the little unit is up on the wall, and it is very quiet. I swear, this will be my imitation of what it sounds like. Maybe that loud, maybe. I mean, it's just a very reassuring little thing. It comes on periodically. It doesn't run all the time. Once in a while, crank it up just to kind of see, and it responds beautifully. It's really an amazing thing. I mean, yay, technology. I mean, that's one of the things about it that I really
installing these units and maintaining it through Efficiency Vermont for about 5 years. And anybody who has these units, I know for a while, I noticed they also need service. The companies don't, they're kind of like not serviceable,
Yeah.
but they do get pretty gunked up over the years, just to throw that out there.
Yeah,
The outdoor unit or
The indoor.
the indoor unit?
yeah, I
There's
have
a
yet
blower
to
room that gets really nasty.
pull off the filter.
Oh, it's a filter, yeah.
There's a little filter up there that you can pop out and clean.
If you
And
maintain that well, it does last long.
Right.
But after a while, I've
Yeah.
noticed that I've been taking blowers apart.
come.
Do you know if that's like 5 years or?
Yeah, it depends on the house.
Yeah.
The houses that I work for are subcontract for zero energy homes. So they rely on that unit solely.
Yep.
And they sometimes have dogs and yeah, about 5 years,
Yep.
they get pretty nasty.
But it is serviceable, it's something that you're able to fix?
Oh, yeah, yeah. They have kits for them and everything. It's just there's,
Yeah, just say that.
yeah, he
Nathan said that he's going to come by, and sort of check things out. We'll have a sense of how much it accumulated.
There's non-toxic chemicals you can use to clean the coils and everything like that too, and pan tablets you put in it to keep the evaporator pan clean.
Yeah.
There's, things that you can use for it.
I mean, I've been curious because we, like I say, we do heat with wood, and sometimes, I might be stupid and not have opened up the catalytic combustor thing, and a little smoke would come out. So that would, probably get into that, would be my guess. Yeah, I don't know. Any other questions or thoughts? I mean, I'm pretty sold on it, and I'm really looking forward to this summer with the AC aspect. That'll be a whole new surprise that I'm pretty excited about.
Can you adjust the humidity?
Well, I guess that would depend at what temperature you're gonna run it at in the. I mean,
Is there there's no separate?
There is a dry mode, and which runs the compressor, which your compressor is generally is a dehumidification. So it runs in a compressor, and it's a dry mode. It brings the cooling down. It brings the compressor.
So you can set it
Yes,
so you
for a
want a
dry mode.
humidity of 40% or something?
Well, it'll bring it down. There's no setting on that, but it will put it into a dry mode and bring it down to at least 50%. That's mostly what you get to is with the air conditioner, 50%.
At least mine don't have a particular
It does put it
humidity
in
you
dry
can
mode.
set it to.
Okay.
I didn't
Generally, most of the rules on it, out of an air conditioner, you get like 50% dehumidification.
Okay.
All right.
Now we have Billy Sharp from Cornish. I also wanted to mention that my brother-in-law is an artist. I think he's a wonderful artist. Okay.
There you go.
And he's a musician.
And a photographer, right?
And
Yeah,
I didn't know the
videographer.
musician part.
Yeah.
videographer.
So yeah, Nate did mine as well, so it's a lot of the same. I guess things to add, so for me, I have a 700 square, or 750, and I have 2 1-ton units, so the same, that's exactly what you have, right? 2
Yeah,
1-ton.
I have 2 1-ton units,
Yeah.
but I have 2 different makes. You probably have.
Right, I have 2 1-ton Fujitsu, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And that's our only heat, so so it's a pretty tight house. So this is my first winter with it, so I don't have a great average on the cost, because every month is a little different. But probably between $80 and $100 a month for electric. And yeah, we've been very happy with it. I would say in the summer, I think this is what you said, Nate, but the efficiency in the summer for AC is incredible. It's like
Sips.
right. It's essentially I didn't notice a difference in my bill. The efficiency for heating is definitely a lot worse. So, if you're not going to use it for AC, it feels ideal if you're using it for both, I guess. Although you're using it for mostly heat, and that's working.
Yeah, I don't really need AC.
Right. So we're really happy with it, largely because we can use it all year round. In the winter, so what we had before, is just space heaters. We just had resistance heaters with one that like this big, and the interesting thing is that you would expect that to have been a lot more expensive than the heat pump, and it really wasn't. Like, so that was only like $80 a month, probably 80 to maybe 150. I think a little bit more, but those were actually great. So if you have a very tight house, there's not really anything wrong with a resistance heater as well. I think that the reason is that with the heat pump, because it's a cool heat, you do need to heat the whole house, versus when you have something like a wood stove, you might not need to heat the whole house to 65 or 70. You might be able to have the house at 55, and then around it, it's like 100, and so then you have that sort of difference. Versus, so we're definitely heating the house a lot more than we used to, because now our whole house is 65. It used to be our whole house was probably 55, but we could sit near the heater. So I think that's why the efficiency is not maybe as high as we'd expect. But again, the price is pretty minimal compared to anything else, so it's not, we're happy with it. But yeah, the price is not, it's not a third of what it used to be. But it's still, $100 a month is not a ton. And yeah, I guess I don't know that I have that much to add. I have probably more questions than I have things to say. But, yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Do you have Fujitsu's or?
Yeah, Fujitsu's.
Both of them?
Yeah.
And how many BTUs are there?
12,000.
12,000 each.
So you have 2 units outside and 2 inside?
Correct. And they run pretty, most of the time, just because it's the only heat we have.
So you run both of them most of the time, you don't
Yeah.
let one of them not?
Well, I mean, it does what it does. I'm not really sure. I think part of our house that we're not in, it does drop down because we're not heating that part of the house as much. So I think that one probably does rest. But I can't always tell. It doesn't like shut off, so you can't really.
So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Fujitsu. Mitsubishi has a sensor so it knows
Yeah.
if you use it.
IPC
If you
sensor.
knows you're in the room, it'll
Right.
come on more.
One thing that I mentioned that is nice is I have it on my phone now, so I can change it from the distance. So that's nice.
Oh,
You can set up a Wi-Fi. Do you have Wi-Fi?
yeah, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
Billy, how did you decide to do 2 units outside instead of 1 bigger unit outside and 2 splits inside?
Bill convinced me, and I think I agreed. Just since it's our only
For
source, if one of them broke,
Yeah,
we wouldn't have
redundancy.
anything. So we had
Right.
2. If one broke, we'd be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you have it installed or?
So Nate helped me out, and I did some of the work, but he did most of it.
And you have backup if the electricity goes off?
I don't really. Our house is so easy to heat. If I just turn on the propane oven or the range, it'll heat it up in 15, 20 minutes. So it's not ideal. If the heat's off for a week, I'll probably drain the pipes and just let it get cold.
Do you find there's any danger of pipes freezing on very, very cold nights because of the heat from the heat pump not being as forceful maybe down where your pipes are?
No, I think if anything the opposite, because like I said, because it's a lower heat, the house is warmer than, so our whole house is pretty much at 65, and at night it's probably at 60. So versus before when we just had a resistance heater, that house was probably more like 50. So I think there's less of a chance of freezing pipes. Because it's a mild heat, you end up wanting the whole house to be at that temperature instead of having, like when you have a wood stove, like I said, it's a huge variation in temperature. But with this, it makes your whole house an even heat, which is more comfortable because you can cross the room and it's not cold.
How big did you say your house was?
Like 750 square feet, so small, but not terribly small. I mean, we used to be like 350 square feet. So not
And
big.
well insulated?
Yeah.
And well insulated?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the difference.
I imagine if you put them in a very drafty house, a big drafty house, I don't know that it would be
Right.
enough to heat it, because it would just kind of disappear.
Mm-hmm.
So it is ideal for our situation. It's great. But like you said, most people don't use it as their primary heat.
Supplemental.
But for us, it's fine as the primary.
since you mentioned that, Billy, we did do the weatherization program through the Energy Committee, and that was this past summer. And we probably did about 3,000, but we had quite a New Hampshire Saves rebate for that, so maybe about $3,000 worth of improvements to tighten the house.
And cost-wise, it's really the same as what everyone else said. I think it was about total $5,000, and then I got 800 back, so like 4,000 something. Which isn't too bad. Well, I got quoted by ARC like 8,000, so if you go to a bigger place that's going to do the whole thing, it is a lot more. So I got a quote from ARC for $8,000, and I talked to Nate, and we figured out we could do it for a few thousand less.
What's ARC?
Mechanical contractor.
Mechanical, yeah.
They're good. I work with them a lot. They're good.
Right.
Okay.
It's not that they just.
Right, I think they do well. It's just it just costs more.
They do really well.
Yeah. I mean, it is a bit of work. It is simple to install, but only if you're like for the DIY. Like you, Bill, are very adept. Like you do your own electric, and like there is a bit of work if you were going to DIY it. I wouldn't DIY it if you don't know what you're doing, I guess, because there are steps. You know, it's not super simple. Cool.
Okay, Will? Are you,
Will Brown.
Will Brown, are you from Plainfield or Cornish?
I'm from Cornish. I have a handout for mine here, so there should be enough copies for everybody. If not, you might have to share a little bit. So, ours is a little bit of a different story. We have a Mitsubishi, and it's an MXZ. It's actually large. It's a 36,000 BTU per hour unit. The rating for heating is a little lower than that. It's 34,000 BTU at 17 degrees Fahrenheit. More than that, if it's warmer, less than that, as it gets colder, it produces less heat, which that's not ideal, but that's the way they work. So it's essentially a 3-ton unit. Ours is also we'll call it a multi-split. It's a multi-zone unit. We have 4 inside zones. So those cassettes on the wall, we have 4 of them. 2 of them are downstairs, 2 of them are upstairs. They're sized differently. They're not all the same size. Ones are there's 2 bedrooms, and the ones that are in the bedroom are the smallest, and the ones that are in a big open living area are the largest. This unit is rated efficiently a little less than the one that Bill has talked about, and probably the other ones. The SEER rating is about 19. These are the official ratings that the unit had. The heating number, HSPF, is about 11.3. That number corresponds to another number called coefficient of performance, which in our case, you end up just dividing that by some constant. It ends up being 3.3. And I find that number useful because what it says is that across the heating season, this unit, theoretically, probably under some ideal conditions, is 3.3 times more efficient than just having baseboard electric heating or space heating in your house. That's in theory. What does it really do? I don't know. There's no way to verify these numbers. You have to be able to measure how much heat you are actually producing over a season. So there's no way to really verify the numbers. It's efficient. It's certainly more efficient than running wires in your house and maintaining a similar temperature level. So I don't think you can really understand giving a heat pump without also understanding the building that it's in. So I want to give a little bit of context. This is the home that we built new in 2016 and 17, and it's all electric. It's about 2,400 square feet, 1,200 up, 1,200 down, and the 1,200 downstairs is about half below grade, so that gives us a level of insulation just from the grade. And everything is well insulated, built to a pretty modern standard for insulation. It's also been air sealed by the builder. This house was built intentionally to be energy efficient. It was built to be powered by a heat pump. This heat pump is our primary heating system. We do have a small wood stove, and I love a wood stove. Because a wood stove is really warm and hot, all the same things you've already heard. I'm really glad we have it. It's also our backup heat when the power fails. So you want to have backup heat. Electricity fails around here. What else about the house? Not really. Basically, that's the idea. It's you get the context compared to the kind of situation that you may have. So this is a large kind of central unit. It's a central heating system. I want to say a little bit about air conditioning. I was just going to say a little bit. It's a fantastic air conditioner. No concerns or complaints. So we have solar on the roof, like a lot of you. We don't run this thing unless we have sunshine. We don't need it unless we have sunshine, and those are the hottest days. We have set-back thermostats. We can set the thing back at about 6:30 p.m. in the summer. It turns itself off. That's about an hour before we lose the power to run it. We're running the air conditioner purely off the sun. So the heat's beating down on us. We're converting a percentage of that to electricity, and we can cool the whole house very easily. It's quiet, like everybody said. Fantastic air conditioner. Nothing to complain about with it. Now, I'm not going to say anything more about air conditioning. I installed an energy monitor. What it is it's a unit. It's called an FRG True Power Meter. It's a single channel meter. It's electric meter. All it really is. However, I can move it from circuit to circuit. If you look at the pictures here, the fourth picture, it's the picture on the bottom shows the two current sensors and a little transmitter. The unit itself to the left of that is a radio receiver. It's just a meter. It's like a $100 consumer product. I picked this, and it can only measure one thing at a time. I picked this unit because it measures real power. The same thing your electric meter measures. It's different from putting a clamp meter on here measuring current. You can do that, and you can multiply it by 240 volts or whatever you have, and that gives you what's called apparent power. Different number. It's always higher than true power. I wanted to know how much power the heat pump in particular was using, but I've also used it to monitor other things in the house, including the entire house. I know from monitoring the entire house and comparing the numbers to the meter that it is about 5 to 10% low over a long period of time. That's relevant to something else I'm going to say in a little bit. So you see the pictures here. It's a much larger unit on the outside. It is mounted about a foot above the ground on a wall-mounted kind of a springy-mounted thing, and it transmits a little bit of vibration into the wall. We don't notice it except when it's really cranking. Then there's a little bit of a vibration, and we'll notice from it. There's another thing in this installation that the other ones don't have. It's called a branch box. That's the other funny picture. It's actually on the ceiling inside. The little two pipes you see coming on the left side there, those are from the outside heat pump unit. So all your heating or cooling is coming through those cooling units. Power is also brought in there. The four little things you see coming out the back, those are going off to the four individual units that we have that are spread around the house. So what you're running through the house is a refrigerant in these small diameter pipes. It's an in refrigerant, an out refrigerant. Power is run with it. Well, I guess that's all really. But every single one of the four units, you also have a drain. You have to be able to drain water out of this thing, just like any air conditioner. Drain has to be able to go outside somehow. That can limit where you can put these units, because you have to have a drain. Something to keep in mind. Your installer has to deal with it. You want to put it here, but no way to really drain it. So that may be something that adds up. It's ductless like the others. There's no air running around in the house. It's moving just coolant. The little units up here have a little cylindrical blower. Very, very quiet, whisper quiet. I'm wearing a hearing aid, so I'm not a good judge of how noisy they are, but I find them to be really very quiet. We installed this unit. On my next page here, I have some numbers. These are from both my meter and from this monitor. So in November of 17, we first installed this unit. We didn't know what we were doing, really, we started to turn it on. We had remote controls. I think they're terrible, but that's just my opinion. They're not programmable. You basically just set it to whatever temperature you want, turn it up, turn it down. You can control the mode, you can turn it to heating or cooling, or the drying mode, or the dehumidification mode. That's all you can do with it. There's no programmability. That's all we had when we first started with it. So we were fussing with this thing all the time, turning the set temperatures up, temperatures down. I'm watching the amount of power it uses, and I didn't do very well in the first 2 months. I burned 32 kilowatt hours in November every day, and I burned 50 every day in December. December of 17 was cold. I had an average temperature for some of the time, 11.8. It's an estimate. My little easy here are estimates. My bill was, just for heating, $262 that month. So late January, we decided to throw away these thermostats and put in, or throw away these remote controls and put in thermostats. They're an expensive addition. There's one for each zone, but they're programmable. You can do setbacks and so on. Much better. Really, the most important other thing about them, the little cassette unit up on the ceiling, it has a thermostat in it, built into the unit, right next to the heat or next to the cool. In the case of cool, not a big problem. The cool is falling. Assuming the units are mounted up high, all of ours are mounted up high. Maybe makes sense to put them down low, but then they're kind of in the way. People don't tend to do that. A unit that's primary for heating really ought to be down low because the heat rises. Ours aren't. So the heat, what happened with the thermostat, with the remote, the heat pooled around and under an insulated ceiling. So we would run for 5 or 10 minutes and turn off. And you wait another 5 or 10 minutes, the heat dissipated, spread around the room, and come back on. So the unit was short cycling. We had 2 of our ceiling units that were doing that. That was another major motivation for buying the thermostats, moving the temperature sensor away from the actual heat source on a wall somewhere further away. That eliminated the heat pooling problem. So if you're going to build a big central system like this, I have to recommend you gotta have a thermostat. They're not cheap. They're wireless. They're actually not made by Mitsubishi. They're made by Honeywell, but they're branded for Mitsubishi. As far as I know, it's the only thing you can buy. Nothing else really works. Excuse me?
You said they're not cheap, how much are they?
These will cost about $250 each installed. So another $1,000 on top of it. If you have only one unit, then it's only $250.
You have to buy a card for the indoor unit to match up with.
Yes, there's electronics that goes in each indoor unit. We had our installer come out and do it. I didn't feel like trying to tear the units apart myself. So there's a price installed, but if you go buy them on Amazon, they're not much cheaper anyway. The winter in 17-18, it got warmer after December. You can see that our costs went down. We're down to $151 down to about $65, and that corresponds with temperature, outside temperature average rising. These are all my numbers. I didn't take these off of websites or anything. I have a thermometer that I write down the temperatures every day. I'm kind of an energy nerd, okay? You probably figured that already.
And I'm glad you joined the energy committee.
Anyway, the amount of our energy that goes into this heat pump is huge. Back in the day when we were running with remote, 70 to 80% of our energy went into the heat pump. By the time we were done with last winter, we were down to about 50%. So this winter, we're trying to do better. We're using setbacks more aggressively. I have done things like actually wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to turn it on manually. The problem with these thermostats is that they won't turn the unit off on any kind of control. It'll go into the standby mode, in which there's no demand because you've set back the temperature requirement. They won't turn it off. Now I'll get to more of that in a minute. Right now, the last row of this table, I'm actually running this thing 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening. And that keeps the house reasonably warm. I can't heat my house to 68 degrees with this unit without running the bill through the roof. That may say more about the house than it does about the unit, but I just can't do it. Downstairs is particularly bad, and will not heat the downstairs. And I think that's because most of the air, the heat just rises up to the upstairs. So, if you want to be 72 degrees,
What's
we
your
didn't do
square
something
footage on
right.
your, what's your square footage on your house?
2,400 square feet. All right, so I have a bunch of observations about it. Electricity's not cheap. It's probably more expensive than propane, oil, anything else for heating. But you're heating with a heat pump, you have this efficiency factor that you don't have with combustion heating. Those two things kind of compete against each other. If you're looking for the cheapest possible way to heat, this ain't it. But it's not bad. And if you want to heat with electricity, you want to have an automatic system, you don't want to do combustion, it's about the most economic thing you can do today in the northern climates. These things have been around in the south forever. They're only now coming up to a northern climate. When it gets really cold, they're going to burn a fair amount of power if you want to keep warm. But, you know, how often is it minus 20 degrees? Not that often. So, over the season, it's not that bad. If you want to heat cheap, you better just use your wood stove. I love my wood stove anyway.
More labor.
So, when it gets really cold, the units become less efficient and they can't produce as much heat. Our unit is called a hyperheat unit, which means, as I understand it, it has a resistance heating in it. When it gets really cold, the heat pump's like, it doesn't really work very well. It starts turning on the resistance heater, and the power goes through the roof. I've seen this thing draw 7,000 watts using my little monitor. And you do that for a couple hours, it starts to draw up your bill. So, as Bill does, having an alternate when it's really cold, and I do too, wood stove is very nice to have. As other people have said, it's a low temperature heat. It's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit coming out. Takes a while to heat your house from ground zero, but you don't do that. You know, you're going to run it. So that's why I have to run it for 4 hours. I can't run it for a half an hour, an hour. I got to run it for 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening to maintain a reasonable temperature. I talked about the heat cooling already, the remotes. I guess I've talked about our set point. We have a set point at about 65, 63 downstairs, 65 upstairs. We simply can't run it any warmer downstairs. The heat escapes upstairs. It's the best you can do. Don't think it's a problem with the heat pump. I think it's more of the house. If I run this thing continuously, and I have done this as an experiment, just leave it on constantly. I did it earlier this year for 4 days. It ran 33 kilowatt hours a day during that time with a nice set point up at least approaching 68, which is where I'd like it to be. It's going to run through a lot of money and a lot of power if I just left it like that all the time. I did that as a baseline. Can I do it that way? And that's really how we started out last year. And I don't want to burn that much money. Personal thing. If you don't care, or your budget, you know, for energy is a little higher, then it can do that. It can run continuously. I'm avoiding that by using the setbacks. This is a real issue with our specific unit. Maybe even an installation unit with ours, I don't know. On standby, which means none of the 4 heads are demanding power, or demanding heat. But the unit is on, it's ready to supply heat. And it's cold outside, below freezing, which is almost always below freezing here in the winter. This thing is sucking down 200 watts all the time. Yeah, I have a monitor, it measures real power, so I know the number's reasonably accurate. It's sitting there drawing 200 watts. And right now, 16 hours a day, it's drawing 200 watts. I think there's something wrong with it. I don't know, maybe because it's a multi-split. I don't have the answer. But it's very high degree of inefficiency there. Something I'm not happy with this unit. So, maybe that sounds like a lot of complaining, but I'll say, it's quiet. It is theoretically at least efficient. It's not a lot of fuss. And you can walk away from it and leave it. I can set it back to say 50 degrees if I want to go on vacation and just leave it. So there's a lot of big pluses. We don't have any oil, we don't have to do any oil combustion, we don't have to do any propane. I don't have those things, but I still like my wood stove.
Yeah.
So that's about what I have to say. Have any questions?
And we also have Nathan Moore to answer some questions from his expertise.
Yeah.
So are you using your wood stove daily or not?
No, we don't use it daily.
Yeah.
I would describe it like this. When it's going to be cold and cloudy,
Right.
we will start it in the morning and use it almost all day.
Right.
If we're going to be around, if we have to be out and about, then we don't. Because I can't keep it running if I'm not there. The wood stove we have is very small. It takes like 1 foot long thing. It's not a big unit.
Right.
It can heat the house nicely. But about every hour I gotta throw a piece of wood in there. So if I'm gonna be around, then it's great, I'll use it. If it's gonna be a sunny day, even if it's cold, I don't need it. Because the house is designed for passive heat. The sun will raise it today. Beautiful sunny day, cold, no fire. I got the house up to 70, 75 degrees. Just sun coming in the windows. And that's great. So if it's gonna be sunny, I don't need a heat pump. I don't need the wood stove.
That sounds good.
Anything else?
Thanks for all this, this is
It
great.
was a lot of good information.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for coming out tonight.
So I'd like to invite Nathan Moore to come forward and talk about what he has to say.
No, I'm here to answer questions if anybody has any on the installation, sizing.
I do.
Okay.
Well, I would like to just say, in your experience, if they involve, install more than one zone, do you find it much more complicated?
As far as the install or the operation of
The
it?
operation of it?
It depends on, which piece of equipment, each one is specific. I've dealt with Mitsubishi for a long time, working with them, they have city multis which really work well. Fujitsu, they don't do a lot of marketing, but they're doing well too. And Dakin units have a VRV system, and it's all, basically the installation is what it is, it comes down to. If it's a core installation, you don't have, this thing's just not gonna operate properly.
You installed both? Or-
Yeah, the three, Daikin, Fujitsu, I don't do any of the other cheaper ones.
So I just want to mention that we heat our whole school with heat pumps
Yeah.
from Mitsubishi.
Oh, yeah, it's coming,
And it's been
technology is
amazing,
going great.
and, the building is super insulated.
Yep.
And I just came from there before I came here, and it was 70 degrees.
What system do you have?
Space where I was.
What school?
Pardon me?
What school?
Plainfield,
Plainfield School.
elementary school.
How
yeah.
many classrooms?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Probably, it's like 26 maybe?
Heat cost a year?
Right now, our total energy cost is running about 28,000.
38?
28,
28?
yeah. And that's down about 70–80% from what it had been before we did that.
Wow.
And this past year, we put in the solar array, which is pretty much makes us neutral. We're darn close.
What manufacturer do you have, what system do you have?
Mitsubishi.
Yeah.
They look like
Yeah.
they look like what's in this.
The city,
And
like
we're
those are
units.
hyperheats, yeah.
You know,
City
there's 2 or
multis.
3 classrooms are connected together, and then this new system for the next.
Yeah.
It's very modular.